Yeah, California is great.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I go to Anaheim once a year
Excellent.
usually, except for COVID times, but
Mm-hmm.
before that.
All right, so we are live now.
Perfect.
So welcome everyone to the stream. We actually just got a raid from Cheskid. So hello, Cheskid. Thanks for
Awesome.
raiding us. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the dojo. We're going to be doing a one-on-one lesson today with James here, aka Pitsky. Can I call you Pitsky, or what do you?
Yeah, Pitsky or PitzkeMP or whatever you want to roll
Okay,
with.
cool, cool. And yeah, I think this is your first time like on the stream. Have you been on the other shows like Scrubs or anything like that before?
No, this is I'm a rookie appearance here,
Cool.
and
Well,
I thank you guys for having me.
yeah,
Real excited.
absolutely. It's going to be good to do a lesson, take a look at some chess with you. Well, we talked a little bit yesterday, but I think we mentioned, yeah, we wanted to talk a little bit about like converting good positions, right? Converting advantages, and as we go through some of your recent games, maybe that's what we'll focus on for today.
Yeah, yeah, that would be really helpful because I know that's kind of one of those places where I feel like if I could tighten that up a little bit, I would really start to see some improvement because I feel like I've improved in a lot of areas, and then recently I just feel like I have all these games that I'm just winning or feel really good about the position, and then just kind of out of nowhere it's like, oh, how did I end up with no pieces left or something? So yeah.
Right. Well then, yeah, let's take a look and see what we can discuss here. So this first game, you mentioned this was a rapid game, 15 plus 10.
Yep.
And actually your opponent, I have their rating, they're very similar. They're like
Yeah, we were.
1267.
Yeah, it
Oh,
was
it's
probably
being
like
weird for me.
twelve
Um,
ninety or 1280 at this time. Yeah.
okay, so we get bishop f4, g6, knight f3, d5, queen d2, e6. So this move to me is a little bit unnecessary because we already played like g6, right? And we want to go bishop
hmm
g7. So what was the idea here behind e6?
Um. You know what? I actually don't know. I don't. That's actually not even typically a move that I do play very often. I guess I'm not 100% sure what I was thinking there or why I did that.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah, I
a
don't know. Block my light square bishop in there, and
yeah, and your light square bishop was like, oh no. Because
yeah,
it definitely would want to come out like bishop g4, bishop f5.
that
These
is
would
a
be good
strange one.
squares.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and e6 is not like a bad move. Like you could play, let's say d5, knight f3, e6 here, then develop the bishop to d6 or to e7. This one is also fine. The other bishop can go to like b7 quite often, or even a6 sometimes. Um, but yeah, normally we don't really want to combine the two because then the
Ah,
dark square
I have the
bishop can
answer for
only.
that actually. So in
Yeah.
Chess, in the comments or in the game, like when you can have a dialogue with the other player, I believe this is when I said, mouse slip.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. All
Yeah, yeah.
right, knight c3, e5, e3, bishop b4. Okay, so we get this pin. Well, now that we played e6, might as well develop the bishop this way. Go for some knight e4. White plays bishop d3, covers it. Knight d7, queenside's castling. We castle kingside. Rook e1, rook e8, king b1, e5. Okay, we go for this break, but white takes. And looks like white had more attackers on this one.
Might not have done proper calculation on that. Yeah.
Right? Because here we see after takes, right, you can take with your knight and then you can take with your rook, but then white also has two pieces that can just recapture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so knight e4, takes. Just kind of want to see how the game played out. White goes for the endgame, takes on e4, we grab the rook, and now we have this kind of funny endgame with rook versus two knights. Okay, so takes. We grab more. Get the rook active.
Yeah, okay, and that was a
Hmm.
definite blunder on my part there,
And
not
we
noticing that one.
hung the rook, unfortunately. And from here, imagine white
So this was, I think,
probably
the
able to
where
win.
it comes in. Where is this technically? Would this just be a straight up like in if by all typical standards, is this pretty much just a losing end game then on for me, or is, like once I'm down the other rook, or is the amount of pawns and my activity enough to make up for the uh, disadvantage here?
Yeah, I think once you lose this one, okay, we get the knight, which is nice, but yeah, piece down in the end game with pawns for both sides usually it's kind of like
Mm,
just overwhelming advantage. Really hard to come back from
he's
that.
got the he's got the 2 pawn advantage on the king side there.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and white is just up 2 pawns on top of that. But even if you took these away, made it like equal pawns, the extra piece is usually enough. Our only chance to draw this really would be if we traded off all the pawns, which would be very, very hard to do for black.
sure.
But hey, if you're in a blitz game, game continues, try to trade off pawns and hope for the best. That's that's all you can really do from here.
So would you typically be using king activity in a rook in your rook probably to do that then, or
From this point,
yeah, to trade off pawns?
yeah, just trying to honestly avoid a rook trade. So maybe going for something like this. That would be it's a
Mhm.
pretty tough situation. I wouldn't
Yeah,
be happy to play this one out as black.
yeah. I was frustrated. Yeah.
So yeah, that's unfortunate. So there are a couple moments here where both sides kind of give up material, which is usually going to be a pretty frequent thing in rapid chess,
Hmm.
as you don't have a lot of time to calculate. So this is one thing I think we can just like flag right away. This is definitely a move we can avoid making because here can kind of count like the number of attackers. Like white has these three that are hitting the square, and black only has two defenders.
Hmm.
So just based on that alone, you don't even have to go like necessarily move by move calculation here. Just by counting the number of attackers and defenders, you can already start to see like, oh wait, it's probably not going to work out. But then if you want to calculate it move by move, then of course you have to be very precise in keeping track of the material. Who's up, who's winning material, who's getting behind, and this kind of thing. Um, and so this was one moment, yeah, where we gave up a piece, and then white gives back the exchange. And then this position, I would say, is definitely still like all three results possible. Rook for two minor pieces, close enough. I would say white is probably a little bit better here. Like generally, I like the two minor pieces more than the rook because they can work
Sure.
together and they're going to be worth a little bit more. But yeah, still a very playable endgame. But then, okay, the decisive mistake is the
Dropping the rook there.
just dropping the rook, right? So instead, let's say, what else could you play here just to take a
So
look at
yeah,
your
I tunnel
position?
visioned and I was definitely going. I was just doing a one move attack on the knight, which was already not that smart. But here, I would
Hmm.
honestly probably just go ahead and take the pawn on f2 with my rook.
Yeah, definitely. Rook takes f2. Get the rook
Yeah.
away from the attack. Now you have a lot of other pawns available as targets. Your move, king g6, is definitely not a bad idea because the knight is guarding the bishop and the knight itself is undefended.
Hmm.
So let's say, for example, your rook was not hinging. Let's put your rook on a safe square. I don't know, somewhere like this. White goes here, for example, and then you play this. This is pretty annoying for white because the pieces are all hinging. So yeah, definitely not a bad idea. It's just well, maybe we had like a little bit of tunnel vision, right? We just didn't see that the bishop
Absolutely.
is hitting
Yeah.
the rook. It's very common to have tunnel vision in chess, just like at all levels, right? You're going to be blundering tactics from time to time, and like the more precise you can be during the game, the more points you score. I think that's why you often see people saying like, chess is like 99% tactics because it's like you can even outplay someone totally strategically 100%. You've completely outmaneuvered them, but then the game gets tactical and they end up with an extra piece and That's it.
Yeah,
That's all that matters.
me and my casual coach have been going over McCall Tall games recently, and that's pretty much exactly. I don't think many great players of the past speak to that statement better than Tall Tall games.
Yeah. I mean, Tall was just like
Just a positional
tactical
math.
tactical genius. I mean,
Yeah.
very good chess player overall, but especially tactically, like he was
Mhm.
just exceptional. So yeah, to me, that's kind of like the main thing I would say about this game. We can also talk a little bit about the opening, like instead of e6, okay, I would say bishop g7, much more natural
Yeah,
move.
100%. The
And
usual. Here.
okay, I'm not sure how your opponent would proceed here. A lot of players, they like to play bishop h6 when they start with this kind of setup with queen d2 and lining up the bishop so they can trade off your bishop. Your opponent might have played knight c3 first and then gone for this kind of thing in the future. But maybe we could just talk a little bit about what your plan here would be as black. You're not
Yeah.
really going to be able to avoid this trade with bishop h6, so I wouldn't jump through hoops trying to like avoid the trade. Like you can play like h5 and then white can't play bishop h6, and I wouldn't really worry about that. I would just like castle, and then I would try to play for
Exactly my question. So I remembered
yeah.
I remembered one thing about this kind of a position where you're not obviously you don't want to take the bishop once it lands on h6. You want to let them take you because then you can capture back and not bring the queen down there. But I was actually wondering if it was bad to castle into that as well, or if you
Yeah,
wanted to
so
avoid castling that in that
I would
situation or
say no, it's a really good question. I would say it kind of depends. In general, I wouldn't want you to worry about it too much, and I would say you should go ahead and just castle. And most
not.
players, from what I've seen, are a little bit too hesitant about castling rather than the other way around.
Sure.
So I'm going to say
And I
in
mean, I'm
general,
nowhere near castling queenside in this position, so
yeah, there are some openings, right, where like castling queenside does make sense. Most d4 openings are not really designed that way just because in d4 openings, it's typically the queen side that ends up uh, opening up quickly.
mhm.
And so you just don't want your king castled on the queen side if that's where, all the pawns are going to be traded off. So in most d4 openings, you'll see black castling king side, and then white can, it depends on how aggressive they want their setup to be. If they're an aggressive player, they'll castle queen side. If they're playing kind of more normally or more positionally, they'll typically castle king side. But yeah, from our point of view, when white is going for this like early attack, the main thing I would suggest to keep in mind is that like chess is a balanced game. So you shouldn't be just getting mated from the opening as long as you're playing decent normal moves, developing your pieces, fighting for the center, like following principles. In general, you have to kind of break a law or some kind of principle in chess for your opponent to be able to just like mate you out of the opening. So
Yeah, you have to just miss something completely.
you have to like either just like weaken your position or waste a lot of time moving the same piece, right? You have to do something really wrong in order to just get mated. But if you're just like fighting for the center, developing your pieces and castling, there's no way this position can really be bad for you. So I would say just go ahead and just castle here. And
Hmm.
the main way to deal with, let's say, white's possible initiative is to fight for counterplay in the center. And that's kind of the main thing that we want to keep in mind. So whenever your opponents kind of throw any kind of, let's say, early like kingside pawn pushes like h4, g4, this kind of thing, your best bet is going to be counterplay in the center using your own pawn break, which in this case for
Sure.
us is this move c5.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, why c5? It's because, e5 is very nicely covered. White can just take that multiple ways. But if they take this one, okay, let's say they place a move here and we go c5, then your bishop opens up. Of course, the bishops can get traded off, but also by taking, they're taking away from the center. So you're able to take a lot of space here, but like knight c6 followed by e5. And this pawn on c5, it's not a very strong pawn. So it's one that you can always win back later
Hmm.
on. Moves like knight e4 here, for example, hitting the queen, hitting the pawn. Yeah, basically what we're doing is we're trying to fight for the initiative, which is going to be very important when your opponent is playing aggressively against you. It's like there's no amount of passive play that's going to just completely rebuff their attack. We have to fight for counterplay in these kinds of positions.
Absolutely.
Does that kind of make sense? Does that answer your
No, it
question?
totally does. Yeah, absolutely. And I know the Indian games are typically tend to be pretty. You can, if you don't take the initiative and or respond properly, it can fall apart really fast. But then it can also be some of your most impressive games that you end up playing too, because it works really well if you're doing things correctly. Kind of a
Yeah.
double-edged sword, from what I've gathered.
Yeah, it is in a way because right, you are giving white some more potential targets like by Fian Kettlewing. But on the other hand, your bishop is quite strong on the diagonal, and so you give
Hmm.
yourself more dynamic chances as well. But I think totally worth playing in my view.
So I guess if we wanted to move on to another game here, I
Yeah.
was kind of tossing. It doesn't matter. We can just choose one. I have one where I play Arnev and Anathula.
Hmm.
It's a 15-10, and that one I resigned after 53 moves. And then the one underneath that was Francis 59, which was 58 moves, and that was a 30-20 in Lichess, which was I was maybe thinking we could look at that one just for the benefit of looking at one of the longer time controls.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the second one? What was their username?
Francis 59,
Got it.
1444 classical rating. That was.
Got it. Yeah, let me download this one real quick. We'll put it in.
I will say I don't know what it is, but I've been just geared towards those modern openings for quite some time. I would like to learn maybe some E4 D4 at some point, but I've been really happy just learning things like King's Indian and the Pirts for
Yeah.
whatever reason.
No, I mean it's all
Fun.
about finding the. I think it's all about finding the positions you find fun
That you
choosing
find
those.
fun,
In your
exactly.
games,
That
the
was when I
openings you
found the
like.
Scotch. Honestly, I was just like, whoa,
Oh,
this
the
is awesome.
Scotch.
Yeah, I mainly use the Scotch as white.
Cool.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so here we're playing black. This was 30 plus 20. Awesome.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm in already. Cool. Right on.
And all right, we got the Caro Khan, Knight A3.
Interesting,
Sure.
to say the least. Just kind of go about my business. Ignore that one.
E6, I like that. Yeah, E6 is going to be a good move against pretty much everything except H4. You probably know this trick in this
The
opening.
tall, yes, yes. My coach just got me. My casual coach just got me with that one yesterday. It was a nice reminder that you can get your bishop trapped.
Right. Okay, cool. So, yeah, knight A3, okay, doesn't really seem to be fighting for the center, so just E6. White goes F4. Now we play C5. This definitely makes sense. Takes, bishop takes, bishop D3, knight E7. Looks great. So we're just wanting to recapture. And then knight H3, and then, okay, this one we decide to take. Queen A5 check, C3, castles. It goes H4. Okay, yeah, definitely lots to talk about. So white does hit you with this B4. Could have done it a move earlier, right away. And
Yeah.
then this would have been pretty annoying. Yeah, we have to give up the bishop for 2 pawns. So it feels like
That's
we
definitely one of those. I guess just you got to train yourself to see when two pieces of yours are one square apart like that in the vicinity of a pawn. Just bad news.
yeah, it's all part of the bigger picture, let's say, but right, in addition to needing to be able to spot your own tactics, which so far I don't think we've had to talk about yet because I haven't noticed any huge opportunities you've had so far. But in addition to that, it's like stopping your opponent's ideas as well, or at least avoiding your opponent's tactics, just as important, right? Because yeah, missing one tactic could just mean losing the game. And your position actually was feeling really good, just coming out of the opening here. Like after knight h3 takes. How did you feel about your chances at this point, if you remember?
right here, I would think I was feeling pretty dang good. I thought I know they had a space advantage. I felt like we were about even in development. I was maybe a little bit more developed, kind of, because his knight isn't really doing much on the side over there, and he's basically got a bishop developed essentially, and I got a knight and a bishop and a queen kind of active. So, eh. Other than that, though, I like positions like this where my pawns are still kind of all comfy in the, you know, without having lost too many of those yet. And yeah, I guess here I wasn't actually sure about the bishop takes the knight. I was just kind of simplifying the board a little bit, I suppose, and ruining their pawn structure on that side. So I felt okay about that. But I think this is probably when I started, and this was a good example of not not being able to convert an advantage, because I think right here maybe I started to struggle with a game plan to come up, or like coming up with a game plan.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. I mean, I think it's a good position to talk about because it does feel like your position is quite nice.
and instead of queen to D, or instead of queen to A5 right there, honestly, I think, and I even, if I remember correctly, I maybe even thought this actually right after I played the move, but I wish I had have played queen to B6 instead, queen to
Hmm.
B6. But I mean, it might be irrelevant or not
No, I
too
mean,
much of it.
also looks like a nice move because you're kind of eyeing this square. I mean, here we can start to talk a little bit about what we should be looking for in this type of position because it's okay. It's a typical scenario. It's like opening has gone well. It's move 9, right? It's like still early in the game, but like
Mm-hmm.
white has we can say that white has committed some crimes just based on our normal understanding of chess that we're trying to just fight for the center and develop our pieces in the opening. It's like, okay, white played knight a3, which feels very wrong. Like, it's
Yeah,
not always bad to put the knight on the side of the board, but the knight needs to have some kind of future. Here, that's
this
very
position
unclear.
didn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, the only idea to justify would be to bring the knight back to c2, but okay, we can already see white never tried to do that. So that's one mistake. And then knight h3 as well, which again, okay, knight's not great on the side of the board, but also allowing you to just totally wreck their king side structure. Now it's just like so many open diagonals around the king. The king side is just very, very exposed. Lots of weak squares and vulnerable lines.
Yes. And I should start seeing that as for what it was and thinking about how I can exploit that weakness as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like two ways of going about it here. The first way is to just kind of focus in on the specific weaknesses. So if you can think about which squares specifically in your opponent's position are weak, you can then kind of draw lines and figure out how to get your pieces to those squares. So for me, one of the first things I would be thinking about is just like this f2 square,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
especially once white has done g takes h3. I would love to just play queen jumps over knight h4 and then queen f2. I think this would just be like fantastic. So for me, first move that like jumps out tactically is like knight f5. Not just because the knight looks very good on this square, but also because I'm just opening up an immediate way to get my queen into what I consider to be white's most vulnerable weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, in a blitz game, I might just play this because like I don't have a lot of time. I see a good move, I just play it. In a classical game, like okay, that's one option. I'm also going to consider just developing the other knight, knight bc6. I think we can also call this like a really like just a natural move. Again, we have to say like this is move 9. Maybe we have a better position, maybe much better. We don't necessarily have to be looking for some kind of forced tactical win. We could just still be thinking about just developing our pieces, getting everything in, and then eventually relying on our good position in the middle game because white does
Mm-hmm.
have, in the long run, a lot of weaknesses, right? So these like pawn structure weaknesses, these aren't going anywhere. White can't really fix these. So the squares are going to be there for your pieces to take for many more moves. So this would be another way to just kind of like slow it down.
Mm-hmm.
Your move, queen a5 check, this feels more tactical. Like we're giving a check, though white had some options, could have played like bishop d2 to hit the queen, but decides to go c3. On bishop d2, what was your idea here? Let's say white just
I
develops this
believe
one.
then I was going to play B. I think I was going to go to queen to B6 in
And
that
b6.
position. Yep.
Right. And so here it's like you're hitting this pawn and you're threatening this check, which is very annoying for white. So it's like it's kind of like unpleasant double attack, we could call it.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes a lot of sense, like tactically, like strategically, queen a5 check and then losing a tempo, and then dropping back queen b6. Strategically, you're just like losing a move. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Tactically, it makes a lot of sense because b2 is now hanging, and you have this double threat compared to just playing queen b6 right away, which only comes with one threat that white can easily defend.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of play in a tactical way, which is fine. But then after c3, we have to kind of, I think, either continue following up tactically or at least not slow down. Right. So with castles, we slow down a bit, and now white actually has a chance, I think, to just win the piece immediately with b4. But
Yeah.
maybe
Yep.
here after c3, maybe we could have kept it going. So any other forcing moves come to mind here that you could consider? Because queen b6, okay, not really working as well.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Hmm. So possibly, I'm looking at my dark square bishop, but now that you pointed out those two different knight moves, those are really I'm looking at those. I'm just like, man, those are obviously just really good moves in this position.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, nice and solid. But in terms of forcing moves, yeah, I'm kind of struggling to find one other than like. So like I'm seeing something really tactical, but I don't know if there's any like solid basis behind it. But like bishop, like a check with the bishop, the dark square bishop, to force the king into the middle of the board because he would capture. But I just don't see any. I'm not sure if I've seen the follow up to that. Kind
Yeah,
of feels like the only forcing move I can see though.
that's fair. I mean, that is okay. We have two checks in the position. They're both they don't really seem to lead to much. I would say that that's definitely fair.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have our captures, which not many, but we definitely have to consider those also.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess Dark Square Bishop captures Knight then,
Hmm.
which would kind of a would lead a would get rid of the opportunity for the fork. It would at least be trading if my bishop would then be at least leaving the board with having taken material with it. Also, it would force an unpleasant pawn move. Again, kind of so now I've ruined their pawn structure on both the king and the queen side.
Yeah, it comes with like some, let's say, strategic considerations like the structure, and yeah, you also get out of the way of b4. But I want you to really look into and try to calculate it out because after takes, we can kind of continue the forcing moves going.
So after that, then that. Then I would be able to capture the pawn on c3 with check.
Hmm.
After that, the bishop or the rook would then be essentially hanging
Rook is
um,
hanging. Yeah.
in the corner. So I would be taking, I would be taking the pawn with check and attacking the rook at the same time. So yeah, that would be that's a nice sequence of events there.
Yeah. Okay, now let's finish it off. White can block the check and defend the rook. Do you see how?
Okay. Yeah, by using their dark square bishop to d2, which would be protecting the rook by lining up the queen and the rook and blocking the check.
Hmm. And then what would be black's best move there?
bishop is gone. That pawn. That pawn. That would probably be queen. Queen to c queen to c6, which would
Hmm.
be which would be moving it out of danger from the bishop and lining up in at least a threat on the other rook, on the light square rook.
Okay, so yeah, not a bad move there, but we're not fully visualizing the position.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to really try to like hone in on the line there,
Okay.
and yeah, again, keep track of all the forcing moves, especially the captures.
Sure. So we'll start. I'm going to start from the beginning here. So bishop captures, pawn captures, queen puts him in check, bishop comes down. Ah, queen captures the pawn that was used to capture the bishop on a3, which no,
Hmm.
I mean that's just a capture, but
It is hanging. Yeah. What else is hanging?
this bishop, the light square bishop on d3.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
Yep, yep.
So, so this is kind of the beauty of this queen takes c3 move is that it like actually, um, almost
Hitting a lot of
like a
got a,
firework, like it
got the wind
explodes
shield or whatever it's called, whatever he
all
calls it.
directions. Yeah. So very very strong, and then I think this would be just winning the game for black because well, it seems like white is gonna either lose the rook or lose this light squared bishop, which is a very important piece, and now we've got an extra piece in the position. Everything can hop in, and
Yeah.
you win the game. Now, this is
So
a tactical shot. As much as you can justify this move strategically, I would say the main reason to do this is because you want to just grab this material,
hmm
which requires us to essentially calculate, right? Calculate
yeah.
precisely
Even
because,
for visualization skills, right?
yeah, because during the game, I can imagine we wouldn't really want to give up our amazing bishop for this knight on a3. Even if it does wreck white structure, it's still a really good bishop. And so it's very easy to kind of discard moves like this for strategic reasons,
And I
right?
would
But
say that
yeah,
in all honesty, I think that would be right at the fringe edge of the farthest I've kind of calculated, I guess, before. That I'd say right now really comfortable like 2 to 3 moves deep, and then once I get into that like 4 to 5 move territory, I start to wonder if like the opponent would just be playing something totally random, and I have no way of figuring out what it would be. But I mean, the way that we went through that though, it was very it made a lot of sense. So
yeah, it felt very like linear and forcing, right? So that's an
yeah.
important thing to keep in mind. Yeah, if you're gonna calculate, let's say deep and really try to push it, you want to make sure that the line is actually forced. So that's the
hmm
mistake a lot of players make is like they just start calculating random moves. They're like, okay, I'll play knight c6, and then white will play queen f3, and then I'll castle, and then they'll go bishop d2. Oh, and then maybe in that position I'll go rook c8. It's like none of these moves are going to happen. You're just calculating a random
Right.
line. But when you
And
say
that's
bishop
definitely what
takes
it felt like a
a3, then
lot.
it's like, okay, white has to recapture, right? Otherwise they're down a piece. Then queen takes
hmm
c3, check. White has to block. Their options are very, very limited. Bishop d2, queen takes d3, and it's
Yeah,
like
not a
we
lot
lock
of
in that position.
So,
Yeah, it's like you.
right, right.
So right, understanding. Yeah, when the calculation is forcing, I think is a good point. Now, people are asking about takes b4, which is kind of a funny counter shot that white can try. But then at least black, okay, this is a house money we're playing with. We took a knight, so we can just take this one and get a lot of pawns. And I think black is still
Yeah.
pretty happy here, just because we grabbed a bunch of pawns. But maybe that's the best that white can do, given that if they just recapture here, they are losing a rook or a piece. So it is kind of a nice trick for white. Although there was also queen c7 for black worth considering. And then just keeping an eye on this one. So takes also kind of a funny
Ooh, yeah.
kind
That's
of
a
a
nice
funny
rebuttal
trick.
there.
Maybe this is better. And then black looks like we're keeping the extra piece. So
Mhm.
um, yeah, so that's definitely one thing that, okay, I mean, most players can stand to work on is just tactics, forcing, calculation, improving your vision, your ability to see the position very clearly. So you can decide, like, okay, you want to make these two moves and get to this position, or you want to make this forcing sequence. That's just always going to be super important and helpful. How are you
Mhm.
working on your tactics, by the way, these days?
I do spurts of lots of puzzles on Lichess and chess.com. I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of just sporadic. I literally sit down on my computer and just like we'll have both sites open and I'll just switch between the two and just do puzzles sometimes. I actually have the chess 5,334 problems, combinations, and games book, and I
Mm-hmm.
will take that over to my friend's house, and we will actually set the pieces up on an OTB board, and we'll take turns choosing a puzzle out of the book, and we will place the pieces on the squares without. We'll name the like square that we're putting the piece on just to practice like board coordinates and stuff like that, and then we'll solve the one like if I set it up, my friend will solve it, and then if he sets it up, I'll solve it. And I've been doing that from time to time. I guess I've
Cool.
also just been kind of just absorbing as much kind of content as well. So I guess that's kind of my tactical practice routine as of right now.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think that's always going to be helpful, especially the like setting up problems on a physical board and solving those, or like working with a training partner. I've always felt like is some of the most useful training you can do. So I'm
I
definitely
feel
a
like
big fan
that's
of
where
that.
I get the most out of it. Is the only problem with that, obviously, is it only happens whenever we're able to get our whatever get together and
Right.
do it. So
Yeah. But well, okay, perhaps doing more like solving, like you could always solve with people online, so you're not just solving tactics on your own, but perhaps working with another person.
yeah, actually, that's something I mentioned in the chess dojo Discord. I had offered. Me and my friend did this thing. I think we only did it like once or twice, but we would screen share in Discord, and we would like one person would be in puzzles, for example, in like Lee chess, and we
Hmm.
would do puzzle streak, where you can only get one wrong answer. Where chess.com you can do three, so that's why
Hmm.
we were using Lee chess. But we would essentially not progress to the next or like make the move until both of us were completely satisfied with the solution, and we would try to like come up with it in our head first, and then voice like maybe get some help if we thought the other person was wrong, and then only proceeded to make the move once we were both in confirmation of that. And that's really fun, honestly. Seeing if you can, just seeing how far you can push your high score. Like, all right, this time we got to 32. Let's try and get to 60 next time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So I would definitely say there's no limit to how much of this one can do. It's just almost always going to be helpful. You don't want the puzzles to be so easy that you're solving them, let's say like under 30 seconds every single time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're solving majority of them within like a couple minutes, I would say that's fine. Or if you're getting most of them wrong, but you're at least spending some time solving them, that's also very valuable as long as you're
Sure, sure.
going over the solution. So yeah, I would say, I mean, this is generally just going to be great training. Um, okay, we
I
can
also
discuss
recommend some
more.
books. Sorry to cut you off. I didn't know you
Yeah,
were.
yeah, go ahead, go ahead. Mhm.
Yeah, I was just gonna say there's also kind of a book list that I've been putting together that I definitely want to eventually get out there and purchase some books to have. The chess problems book is the only one by Polgar is the only one I currently have. So
Mhm. Cool, cool. Well, yeah, there's of course tons of options on the book side,
yeah,
especially
I've
when it
watched
comes to
your
like tactics
recommendations
and
plenty. So
solving. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So right, whenever you're ready to like really start grinding and training, that's
yeah,
the way to
yeah.
go.
What is it? Botvinnik's end game or manual or tutorial or whatever. Is that what it's called?
Oh wait, the endgame behemoth?
Yeah, yeah. Botvinnik, is that who wrote
No,
it?
it's
Or
Dvoretsky.
yeah,
I think
Dvoretsky.
that's one
Yeah,
of
yeah.
the
There you go.
yeah.
That I'm definitely ready for that. Right.
Yeah, that's my first first recommendation to everybody.
For specifically for people that have been playing chess for under a year.
Right, right. Just get that book.
I mean, I've always said you tackle the hardest issues right from the start, and that way you're exposed to that master level of difficulty. It just can only be good for improvement, right?
Can only be good. How could there be another point of view? Actually, wait, I wanted to ask you about this position here, or somewhere around here. I don't know if you remember this part of the game, but you basically have like a million pawns for the knight.
Mm-hmm.
Your opponent goes queen f2, basically offering you a queen trade. So take me through your thought process here. Like, it seems like we didn't want to trade queens, but what exactly was it? Did we not like the endgame, or do we just want to keep queens on the board, or maybe something
You
else?
know, that is a good question because I guess maybe I should start to think about what my end game prospects are actually really looking like. Because in this position, I felt, I mean, if you were to look at if you were to just look, and this was when I was trying to think of the game, I was like, I had a million pawns. Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, once the queens are off the board, this is like the easiest end game in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So when he offered me the queen trade, I guess it really would have made sense to take it. I think I was kind of tunnel visioned into trying to. I was like going for a specific checkmate, I guess, with my rook and my queen, and thought that I could maneuver around his queen to do so, possibly. Um, but when you prompt me to really analyze what I was thinking in this position, all I can think is, what was I thinking? Because I have a million pawns. All I gotta do is
Yeah.
march a couple down the board with the rook behind it and promote one,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
then
right.
I'm
So
not a
this is
queen
kind
anymore.
of
And
interesting. Mhm.
then I have my queen back. So
Right, right. So like, oh, well, let's take a look at this position. So we got this rook h8 check, knight h2, and then you play this move e6, which I can only interpret as you just showing to your opponent like you can literally just do anything here. You can just take a million moves, advance these pawns. White is just very much stuck on the king's side here. Like pinned knight, queen and rook have to stay passive to defend the king. Your king is actually very nicely guarded by these pawns. Nothing white can really do. No real targets. So it's kind of showing like, you understand where your advantage is here. It's just like you're in total control over the position. And then, yeah, queen f2, when we avoid the queen trade, that kind of runs a little bit counter, I would think, like you're saying now. Like, yeah, you just trade the queens, then your king never has to worry about anything ever again.
yeah,
And yeah, your million pawns are always gonna outplay. Generally we think like 3 pawns is about equal to a knight or a bishop. Here you have
that's a
five
good rule of
pawns.
thumb I never thought of before. So
So
okay, so
you're
about pawns.
yeah, so you're definitely way
Now,
ahead.
would you say that's like three pawns that are in a like relatively coherent structure, or just like three pawns in general, even if they're like three pawns on the same on the same file even. I mean, maybe not that extreme, but like would
Yeah.
double pawns even kind of play into that kind of consideration usually?
No, that's a very good question. No, so this is a really like it's a subjective evaluation. Yeah. So if you have three connected pass pawns, let's say this is the healthiest you can get, right?
Mhm.
Those are often going to be as good as a piece, sometimes even stronger if they're far advanced. Because then they
Sure.
at some point they just start promoting, and they're worth way more than a piece at that point, right?
Hmm.
But if they're tripled or doubled or isolated or weak, then they start to be worth less than a piece. But it's
Sure.
always going to depend on the position. If you had, let's say, three pawns in a clump, those can be pretty strong because they can defend each other, they can advance. Ultimately, it comes down to like, are the pawns weak or are they stable? Like,
Sure.
if they're weak, that means your pieces have to defend them. That means your pieces have to be passive, no good. And then another question is like, are the pawns mobile? Like, can they actually make progress moving forward, or are they stuck? If they're stuck, that often runs into problems because you just run out of moves, then the pawns end up being weak. So it's always just kind of like a tricky thing to evaluate, but just to give you some guidelines.
Hmm.
Um, but
Yeah, that was super useful that you asked me because
yeah,
honestly, I can guarantee next time I'm in a position like this and the opponent really just I mean, it was foolish of them to offer a queen trade, I guess, in retrospect, and even more foolish of me to decline.
yeah. I mean, from White's point of view, they just don't have a lot of moves in this position, so you can kind of understand. Literally, king is tied down, knight is pinned, rook is not really doing much. You just played a6, so they just have nothing to do. So queen f2, whatever. But
Sure.
then from black's point of view, yeah, the only way we can mess this up is if we allow some kind of counterplay with the white pieces. And so even though I still think you're totally winning if you keep the queens on, like this position still looks very, very good for you. It's just slightly more likely that white will get some counter chances, and it's a little bit harder for you to push your pawns when there's enemy queen on the
Yeah, and you're
board.
also busy kind of trying to make sure you're not losing your queen, kind of using tempo to avoid the trade rather than to
Yeah,
progress your position.
yeah. There's more tactics you're gonna have to avoid. So, as kind of a general principle, if the end game looks simple, you might as well go for the end game. Now, there are different kinds of player. Some players, they just want to finish the game off with checkmate, and they understand that the end game is winning, but they also understand that the middle game is winning, and so they keep the queens on the board because they just prefer it that way, and that's totally fine because that works for them. For many
Mm.
other players, they like to just simplify things when they're winning. I would probably put myself in this category, and unless I'm like mating in three moves after queen e4 check, probably just going to trade queens, advance the pawns, and know like there's nothing I can blunder. My pawns are moving forward. My king is now a lot safer, and yeah, I can win this with my eyes closed pretty much.
Yeah, easy breezy. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you can, again, you can always take things too far, but yeah, I think
I
that's
think that's
easy
a
way
great
to
point.
think about it. It's like if the
Mhm.
end game is pretty straightforward, then yeah, just go for it and
I think
finish
there's
it
definitely
off
maybe a
nicely.
little bit of like first year, kind of rookie or amateur player, um, and I guess anxiety when it comes to end games. I suppose you could say like
For sure.
I guess I'm starting to feel more comfortable with them and understand positions in end games, but it's definitely one of those things where for the vast majority of my career so far, I've been like, please don't let this go to end game.
Right.
But
Yeah. So that definitely another thing to think about. Oh, I see.
definitely,
We just hung the rook here. That's unfortunate.
yeah, yep, it got really messy real
Um,
fast. Jeez.
okay. And still with the pawns. See, now that you hung the rook, now I'm not sure we should be going for the endgame, but that's okay because now it's like White's rook has an easier time. But
That's how I dropped
anyway,
that one.
it's unfortunate. But
Because this was the game where I was thinking specifically like, how did I lose this? Well, it makes sense now.
um, yeah.
That's
So let me
right.
ask you about endgames a bit more. Have you looked at any endgame like lessons or books or anything like that?
Apart from the chess dojos, I think you went over like three different like end games that are very common. I want to say like the can't remember what they're called now. One of them, you're like building a bridge, which I made honestly no sense of. I had no idea what that meant, building a bridge. No, I I guess not really. I haven't specifically studied any end games the way I probably should be doing at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something like at some point I think it's just going to be necessary, because endgames are just a super fundamental part of chess, and
Right.
they're going to happen. Yeah, just so many reasons. There's a couple of like good resources out there, but I would say an easy one to start with. There's lots of good endgame videos on YouTube, I'm sure. So you can definitely, if you prefer learning by videos, you can look up and learn about all kinds of endgames via YouTube. There's a good Chessable course that's free. It's just called like Basic Chess Endgames or something like that.
Write that down.
And I've looked at it a little bit, and I think it's really solid. Like it just has a bunch of like the most common fundamental endgames that you're going to find in a lot of endgame books. It doesn't go into anything too deep as far as I can see. It just gives you like the real fundamentals, the things you should know, and you can practice. I think Chessable is actually really great for practicing endgames in general because I think it's important to kind of get that muscle memory into your hand, like playing out the endgame yourself.
Absolutely. So I mean, like, because I know opposite colored bishop endgame that's gonna typically be pretty drawish. I know same colored bishop gonna be really kind of tactical, and you gotta watch what you're doing. I know how to. I know roughly that two rooks is usually a little bit more powerful than like a single queen in the end game, and it's really just the king and pawn in games that I struggle with the most. I think the thing that I can honestly, if I were to like pinpoint one of the things I struggle with the most, it would be knowing when to push pawns in an endgame and knowing when and where to activate my king.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, and there was one game I was going over with my casual coach just yesterday where I pushed a pawn. So I guess if you were to just envision, like there was a pawn on, I believe C4 and a pawn on B4,
Mm-hmm.
and actually no, I'm sorry, one of the pawns was in front of the other one, so it would have been like B3, and for whatever reason there was a bishop attacking one of them, and or could have been, and I pushed the pawn on the C file to be level with the B pawn, and he pointed out that like if I would have just pushed the other pawn first, they would have just been promoting,
I
and it
see.
would have
Yeah.
been, and I'm, you know, like they wouldn't have been. But at the time, I remember just struggling to figure out which how to push the pawns in a way where they were safe and protected.
Right.
um,
Well,
so
that's one of those things I think will also come from experience. Just playing lots and lots of chess and especially analyzing lots and lots of chess. That's how you can pick up on all those like little details and nuances and stratagems. Um, Also, someone mentioned Silman's book. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Silman's book for like basic chess endgames. I think that's a great one. If anyone is looking for like an endgame book, that would be the one that I would start with. But
one
there's
that's
also
a
the free.
series. So is Silman's, is that the series? Like there's three of them,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
Endgame, and then, or maybe I'm just thinking of a different book, but okay.
No,
I know
I don't think
I've
so. No,
heard
he
that
just has one. It's called like Silman's Complete Endgame Course or something like
one.
that.
Okay.
And that one is really good. That one has like endgames organized by like level, which I think is really useful. And for the most part, I would say it's really well explained. So that was okay. I think that the two main things I would have you work on, just based on our very very brief time together,
Hmm.
would be tactics and calculation, especially like forcing tactics. This is just something
Yeah.
that's going to be coming up in your games, both on your end, like tactics that you have, and then of course tactics for the opponent. You definitely want to get better at spotting them ahead of time, being able to avoid them, and then also the first thing, which is just being able to find tactics when uh, options are presented to you. But it
Hmm.
also goes so much further beyond that, because there are many, 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 many positions where you want to play a move for strategic reasons, but you have to justify it tactically, right? You have to understand that in order to play this move, your opponent can hit you with some tactical idea, and it doesn't work because you have this nice counter, right? So it's like good chess is often built upon seeing a lot of tactics in the background in the position that you're avoiding or setting your opponent up for, and then they have to avoid. And okay, long story short, tactics are super, super important. So that's just going to be something like no limit for you or pretty much anyone out there to work on. Secondly,
Yeah.
endgames are really fundamental because you can win many points in the endgame if you just know it a little bit better than the opponent. You can save a lot of points if you understand how to hold a position that should be held or to make it difficult for the opponent to win. So many points can be won or lost in the endgame, and so I think those are definitely worth studying for
As we saw
everyone.
in that last game, I mean, once your opponent can get some counterplay going, it's crazy how fast the position can turn on you. So
Yeah, no, I mean, and like pretty much every time I'm like watching a tournament on stream or like a rapid tournament or sub battle or anything, it's like end games get overturned all the time. Even end games that you would just classify as being really really simple, really straightforward, they just get messed up all the time. It's just not easy, It's like, and especially with time trouble, we have to remember like when you're studying something, it's one thing, it all makes sense. Then when you're actually playing the game and the clock is ticking, it can feel like a completely different position. That's why like practice is very, very important, I think, when it comes to just working on chess as
Mhm.
a whole.
And so one last thing
Yeah.
before you go, I didn't promise, but I played a game against a fellow dojo member the other day. It was just a training game. He wanted specifically to practice his Dutch opening and Alpha
Hmm.
Canis Major. And I did mention that I would try and get you to analyze that one or at least just briefly go over that game, just look
Yeah, you
through it.
want you want to take a quick look?
Yeah, so the game against Bab G 1219
Yeah.
that I sent you, the 1510, that
Yeah.
was the game that we played.
Cool. All right.
I
Let's
did win this one, and my casual coach, after reviewing it, didn't have a whole lot to tell me after this game as like a complete. I think the first time ever he ever looked at one of my games and actually didn't have anything to say.
That's great.
I
Yeah,
was
I
like,
always tell my students like if we don't say a lot about a game, it means you played well.
yeah, I was like, wow, I can't believe it. Like nothing. I didn't do anything that he would have done differently. He's like, not really, no. I mean, he did, the thing he said was, yeah, I mean, this is basically just why I don't play the Dutch. And so a little bit of background here. I don't play D4 a lot. I have obviously dabbled with Queen's Gambit, but I just thought to myself, I'm gonna just play as kind of positionally and solid as I know how for D4 openings.
Hmm.
But it ended up just getting to be a crazy tactical game. We did pinpoint his major mistake, which was pushing the D pawn when he did, and then the E pawn. Those were kind of the two things that we pinpointed as like the fatal error because he allowed that knight to jump into that strong square there.
Yeah, I mean, right. So this was a nice idea, and then d5 definitely shows black the problem with doing this because the bishop really needs to be on the diagonal to cover the
Mm-hmm.
e6 square. Yeah, so this was great, and then I like e4. I like that you didn't just trade off your good knights. G5, queen d3, f4, beautiful, opening up the rook. Yeah, no man, you played great this game. And then okay, it looks like Black's queen was just
I think
trapped.
so. So I think so. His
Nice.
rationale behind doing that was he was going to lose the queen anyways, and so he figured he might as well just take a rook with it. I
Yeah,
guess
right.
I wasn't sure if that was actually the if that kind of reasoning was. I mean, it might have been inconsequential, but I also feel like that actually directly led to the mate line. So um, I'm not sure.
No, I mean
That was,
it's a simple case of what else? Yeah, Black's queen is
yeah.
trapped, so either you give it up on f1 or maybe take here and then get ready to recapture. But yeah, either way, white is you're just breaking through here. The attack is just way too strong. Now there maybe was one or two things we can improve here.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, this kind of move, bishop d2, I don't really see what it does for you, right? It's just like this bishop controls very few squares either on c1 or d2. So
Sure.
I would just develop this guy here. You know, you want a castle, king side. That's going to be useful, and then figure it out. Maybe the bishop comes
Uh-huh.
out this way, because if we look at how the game progressed, your bishop just ends up going to g5.
Right.
So you could have literally
Yeah.
done the same thing with the bishop on c1 this whole time.
Uh-huh.
Maybe the extra tempo would be useful, you know, in some regard, right? Like, and okay, the bishop can also be fianchettoed if you don't want it. Like if you're not going to play e4 and open up the bishop this way, then you can also put it on b2, and then it'll exert some pressure over the long diagonal. So that would be maybe the one thing. This was kind of definitely not the most ambitious way to play the opening. But knight g5, d5, very, very good, I would say, positional chess, just like focusing on the weaknesses and then playing to the needs of the position, which is to open it up, right? Because you're really dominating the king side. So this was very well played from there.
And then I do know I missed a couple mate in ones after towards the end. It was
Oh,
I
that's
think
not
there's
good. Don't
two,
do that.
I think there's two different maiden ones that I missed. So like here pulling the piece back, I think would have just led to a checkmate, and then yeah, I basically extended the mate by 4 moves, but um,
Oh, I see. I see. Yeah,
yeah,
you had this one.
yep, exactly. Going through the process of actually promoting that pawn it
Um,
was not necessary.
it's not a big deal. I mean,
It's
it's
still a
definitely
forcing
nice to
checkmate,
find
but
yeah the cleanest way. But like if you're just up a queen and a rook, then whatever. There's always going to be a million ways to mate.
at that point,
Um,
I felt like that pawn had to promote for some kind of like its mission in life was to promote, and I was gonna be like, denying it its like earthly duties essentially if I didn't
I
promote
see.
it.
But at least do this one. You know, this would have been the poetic way to end the game if you really need the pawn to promote.
Yeah.
This would have been the
Oh,
way
I
to do
see.
it.
Yeah, the queen sacrifice method. Sure,
Because
sure.
then there's no escape.
Kind of like a reincarnation of success and victory.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. So I mean, I feel so that's a good call though. Something to gain from that. Think about maybe tempo in terms of like if I wouldn't have been able to know that that's where the bishop was going, obviously from the first couple moves. But in retrospect, it wasn't doing a whole lot.
Yeah, there's
Pretty
not much
fair.
it's doing.
That's
Yeah.
pretty common in D4 openings in general, is not developing that bishop right away because of it being blocked off like that, or
I would say it depends. You know, there's different openings, but for example, in like the Queen's Gambit declined, let's say, you know, often white is playing bishop g5 here and then playing e3 so the bishop doesn't get shut in. So the bishop comes out, sometimes to f4
oh,
as well. This makes sense, or like knight f3 and then bishop
sure,
f4. And then white plays e3 and the bishop doesn't get blocked in and then the other bishop comes
yep.
out. This is
Okay,
pretty typical.
sure.
But for you, in terms of the opening, I would just stick to one e4. I mean, you mentioned you were enjoying the Scotch game. I think
And then
e4 is a perfectly good move. I would just stick with this one until
yeah,
you get tired or sick of it or something and you really want to switch. Then okay, you can always switch it up, but I wouldn't change just for the purpose of changing.
no, no. Mostly if somebody asked me to go D4, I have no problem doing so. And then occasionally, I'm just one of those people where I'm just so obsessed with chess that like sometimes I do things that aren't great for my chess, like play 10 bullet games in a row for no reason at all. Get maybe
Uh-huh.
a mate or two in there, and for the most part, blunder every piece I have and learn nothing from the games. But it was just playing chess. Sometimes I'm just like, hey, I kind of feel like playing D4, but not in the. I'm trying to learn how to play aspect. Um, One thing that is frustrating, I will say, in the Scotch though, I have yet. I would say 95% of the people I played against, still at my rating level,
Hmm.
still just recapture the knight in the center and then allow me to develop with my queen with tempo. And those lines,
Oh yeah.
while they're getting super comfy, I know that that's not going to be around forever, and it would be great to start playing people that actually are starting to play me in a more challenging method. Because yeah, right here it's like, and then honestly, I can start to predict exactly what the person's going to do here. They either attack me with the C pawn, or they develop their other knight and allow me to push my pawn and kick their knight with tempo. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of like, this again.
I just did a video on this one. It's called Everyone's First Game Against the Scotch, where, yeah, look at a game like this. It's like c5, queen d1. And then
Actually,
there's this big.
yeah, I was gonna say I typically will push my queen forward there actually, but
Oh,
I don't
I
know
would
if
say
that's
just drop it back to d1 because it just gets out of the way, and then you have this nice square on
sure.
d5 for the knight. Bishop comes out. This bishop can come out, and
I think I've had
yeah.
too many fairy tale mates where I push my queen forward and then they allow me to develop my light square bishop behind it, and I just end up
Oh,
with
I
a
see. Yeah.
7 or 8 move checkmate. But I mean, in terms of thinking about it in the long term and actually more solid positional, it's good to know that you would actually just drop your queen back there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
all right, James. So let's sum it up. Basically, uh, I like that you're playing lots of rapid and classical chess. I would definitely encourage you to do more of that, especially like spending time on your moves, really trying to like delve into positions if they're complicated, if there's something to calculate. And then outside of playing a lot, analyzing your games, I think you're doing all this correctly. Um, just solving lots of tactics, working on that calculation skill, I think that's going to help you. And then working on the end games is something that just everyone has to do. At some point, it's just kind of like part of the fundamental. I don't even know what to compare it to. It's just part of the fundamental skills of chess is knowing your end games and knowing how to convert king and pawn versus king, how to defend king versus king and pawn, queen versus pawn, the basic rook end games. If you feel comfortable with these like really simple end games, I think that'll help you. That'll go a long way.
Immensely. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, and just it would help me with converting. I would, wouldn't be dropping as many positions that I kind of have nice winning positions going into it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, end
Just
games
maybe
are
being
like
able to
putting
see a
in
little bit
golf.
deeper.
Yeah, I like that. It's like putting in golf. Putting is not everyone's favorite, but it like
But do you want to get the birdie or do you want to get a double bogey
yeah,
after
it's
a
like
beautiful drive?
exactly. You can have the longest drives. You could be yeah, just like the most accurate shot, but like if you can't get that putt in at the end, it's all for naught.
That's a great analogy,
So
actually.
true.
Totally.
Well, cool. So tons to work on. You mentioned when we talked yesterday, you might play some OTB events in the future, maybe at the end of the year, maybe next year. So
Yeah. Yeah,
that'll
I'm
be
looking
fun.
definitely looking forward to getting
Oh, oh, uh-oh. We lost Pitsky.
historically chess has been
There we go.
played, OTB for hundreds of years, and I guess I just don't have that. Just I think it was you that said something about like it's just you and the board, or like you and the other person. There's nobody talking. It's just you and your thoughts, and it's just sort of this different kind of almost like Zen kind of thing that I definitely haven't experienced while playing chess yet. So
Yeah, OTB chess definitely for me always felt almost like meditative because yeah, it's like you're just not talking for multiple hours and just making eye contact with your opponent or maybe with other people like around the board and yeah, it's just you and your thoughts. But it's very enjoyable. I think it's quite fun.
hmm. Well, you've been
Um,
honestly super helpful as expected, and I
Great.
definitely couldn't thank you more for taking the time to sit down with me and go through these games. Kind of pinpointing a couple of areas that I definitely could be working on. So um, it's all part of the journey. Every little last thing that I'm picking up, is getting me closer to my end goal of being slightly better at chess than I was a year ago.
Yeah, glad to hear it, man. As long as just like it stays fun, it stays interesting, like yeah, you'll always be on the way. It's just you gotta find
I'm
what
a
you're
little,
interested in, find some
I'm a little
players,
sad that I didn't pick this up like years ago because I didn't know that this was one of those things where a year in, I enjoy it way more now than I did even back then. So it's definitely, I feel like I would have had the kind of, it would have grabbed me in a way where would probably have, some sort of a title right now, FM, IM, whatever you name it, if I would have started early enough and, been doing this for longer. So, um, but better late
yeah.
than never. So,
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, yeah, I like to flip those thoughts around to the future. It's like, okay, what do you wish you could do now for the next year that you could look back, a year from now or 2 years from now and be like, oh, it's really good that I, did this like full year of work.
mhm.
So yeah, but well, as long as it stays fun, I think that's all that matters. Okay, I'm gonna let you hop off. I'll stick around on stream for a little bit, maybe answer some questions,
Cool.
and yeah, I'll talk to you in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for your time, man.
All right, have a good one. Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Alrighty, folks. Well, that's gonna more or less wrap it up for the stream today. We do have Friday night fights coming up tonight, which is hosted by SM Pooh Bear, and that's going to be Blitz and Bullet tournaments. And then tomorrow, this was just announced earlier, or yesterday, I think, we're doing a rapid sub battle against Pawn Grubber. It's going to be a 15 plus 5 time control, and that's taking place starting at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So we'll probably do sign up, probably post something today, and you'll be able to sign up for that ahead of time if you're interested. But that will be all taking place in the Discord. So make sure to be in the Discord if you're interested in that or any of our other events. You really should be in the Discord. The Discord is the most important place. It's more important than Twitch. In fact, delete your Twitch app. You don't need it. You just need Discord. That's the only thing. Okay. Alrighty, folks. Well, I think, yeah, that's going to wrap it up. More streams this weekend. And then I think we're doing our regular Rapid tournament on Sunday morning as well. So you guys can enjoy that. Okay, well, let's see. Let's find someone to raid. That'll be it for the stream today. I think David raided Benjamin Bach earlier. All right, let's raid Velcro Dot. Looks like she's got a viewer arena. Cool. So you guys can go join that. And have a good rest of your Friday. Take care, everyone. Have a good one.